For the first time in this video, we present a new historical perspective with some amazing new facts on the life and achievements of what many people all over the world believe was the greatest leader of all time, Muhammad, the messenger of God. Peace on him.
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا.
Islam was born an unwanted orphan in the harsh desert of Arabia more than 1,400 years ago. When this new code of life was introduced to an ignorant, wild, and warring desert pagan tribe by a man who could neither read or write and was himself an orphan, Islam was ruthlessly rejected without compromise. But Muhammad, born in 570 after Jesus, the spiritually awakened son of Abdullah and Amina, from the powerful and wealthy Quraysh tribe, was destined, as recorded by eminent historians and biographers, to become, despite his illiteracy, one of the world's greatest leaders. Abdullah died before seeing his son born, and Amina expired when Muhammad was 6. So he grew up under his grandfather and then his uncle. Within a period of 23 years, Muhammad rose not only as a powerful prophet, a messenger of God, and an extraordinary wise and strong leader to a turbulent nation of savages, but also as the incredible architect who reformed them into a spiritually awakened, civilized nation, who after his death in 632 after Jesus, went on to forge a massive empire with a lofty culture that ignited the world with a period of splendid learning and early scientific achievements. In his role as a prophet, Muhammad, peace on him, stood out as an amazing prodigy of many talents. Notable biographers, historians, researchers, and writers who have studied Muhammad's life have never failed to express amazement at the prophet's role as saint, sage, philosopher, philanthropist, sociologist, psychologist, nature healing therapist, economist, politician, jurist, statesman, ruler, military commander, soldier, religious leader, husband, father, and grandfather. In all his roles, Prophet Muhammad, peace on him, lived the life of a pragmatic saint, practicing what he preached, which made him larger than life. So much so that it took him to heights greater than the time in which he was born. Muhammad was molded by the hard desert life into a powerful and fearless warrior, skilled in the martial arts of swordsmanship, archery, and unarmed combat. He was also an excellent horseman who learned to break wild Arab stallions at an early age. His early biographers described him as tall, rugged, and broad-shouldered, with handsome suntan features. At the ripe age of 40, in the role of a prophet, he set in motion an Islamic missionary movement, the likes of which had never been emulated by any religious come secular world leader, and which, in a short span of 30 years after his demise in 632 after Jesus, exploded with lightning-like speed into the largest empire that the world had yet seen. It was an Islamic empire that took in almost 3/4 of the globe, and in the process destroyed two of the world's mightiest powers at the time, the Romans and the Persians, and changed the course of history. Islam's empire stretched from its holy center, Mecca, in Arabia, also said to be the center of the world, northward into Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey, and the entire Middle East, then northeastward to Afghanistan, present-day Pakistan, India, Tibet, China, Mongolia, Russia, and then southeastward into Indonesia. The conquest westward covered more than half of Africa from its eastern horn down towards Mozambique and surrounding islands including Madagascar and coastal Mombasa. From Tanzania to right across Central, West and North Africa, onward across the Mediterranean, into Spain, Portugal, France and Italy. The Islamic influence also went further west to coastal Suriname in South America and into the West Indies. If miracles are indeed the attributes of prophets, then according to scriptural scholars, the miracles of this one-time shepherd youngster who never went to school and grew up to be a trader was his ability to incredibly fulfill all the roles he played, plus, as an illiterate, leave behind a veritable religious encyclopedia, the Quran, that comprises of 114 chapters with more than 6,000 statements impregnated with timeless wisdom that touches on every subject in the universe.
Read, in the name of your Lord who created man from something which clings. Read, your Lord is the most noble, who taught by the pen, who taught man what he did not know. Surat Al-Alaq, verses...
After receiving divine revelations from God, the prophet began to preach the oneness of God and the brotherhood of man. And for the next 23 years, he fearlessly challenged the credibility of the idol-worshipping practices of his people, earning their wrath to the degree where the pagans unleashed a campaign of ruthless persecution against the prophet and his growing number of disciples. The persecution became so bad in the first 13 years of the prophet's teachings in Mecca that he was compelled with a number of his followers to emigrate to the distant settlement of Medina, where he was more welcomed by a people who had heard about his teachings and were prepared to accept him as a prophet. Muhammad expounded the universally accepted moral and ethical code of righteousness and justice, calling on mankind to practice these higher values at all levels of human experience. It was the same lofty teachings voiced by the earlier prophets of God, such as Abram, Moses, Jesus, and other chosen messengers. These teachings are today embodied in the Quran. In Medina, the prophet succeeded, in a short span of 10 years before his death in 632 after Jesus, in establishing the first desert government with a divine constitution that came out of the Quran. He also built up an army of Islamic fighters programmed to die as martyrs for God's cause. The dynamics of the Quran that was daily pounded out by the prophet had miracle-like transformed a large society of immoral desert dwellers into a spiritually upright nation. And the primary moral obligation which Islam placed on Muslims to pass on the Quran's teachings to all mankind on this planet, known as Dawah, was the powerful driving force which led to the rapid spread of Islam. At first, the Prophet sent peaceful envoys to deliver the Quran's message to Roman, Persian, and other pagan emperors and oppressive rulers. The tyrants and despots rejected these messages, murdered the Prophet's envoys, or flung them into dungeons and launched terror attacks against the Prophet's missionary campaigns. This forced the Prophet and his military commanders to declare war on the corrupt dictators. the Muslims were victorious in all their campaigns against incorrigible tyrants. The Prophet had also placed great value on knowledge and learning. He had instructed his followers to travel to the far corners of the world in search of the seeds of learning to pass on to mankind. Some of his historically recorded words were, "Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Go even to China in search of knowledge. Knowledge is the lost property of a Muslim. Take hold of it wherever you find it." The Quran in chapter 20, verse 114 commands Muslims to pray for an increase in knowledge. The Quran also asserts in chapter 58, verse 11, that Allah will exalt those who have knowledge to high ranks. The turning point in the Prophet's life came when the greater percentage of the Arabian population